AI systems are often complex, and the details of their processing is not known to the end user. There is a field of AI called XAI, or Explainable AI, which aims for users to be able to understand how AI-based systems come up with their results. This all leads to better AI quality systems. Our next speaker has been exploring how the testing domain can demystify AI for the everyday user. Let's all welcome Senior Consultant for Planet Testing NZ, Mr. Kim Deloria.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here in SoftCon 2023. So, while I share my screen, I'd like to very much to interact with you. So, it's evening in my part of the world right now. So, maybe very briefly, if you can type in hello or or hi in the chat, or tell us where you're from while I share my screen. Okay, here you go. And hopefully you can see it. So again, good afternoon. I'm hoping you can see the screen. So and I hope you're all in good spirits. My name is Kim Deloria. I'm currently right now based in Christchurch, New Zealand. So before I begin, I just have some notes. Apologies in advance. I have a cough, so I may mute the mic on occasion. So please bear with me if that's the case, and just ensuring that it's not muted at this point. Okay. And then, so in case I don't get to press the mute button and I do cough or stifle a cough and end up saying something funny, again, apologies in advance. Second, we all know Murphy's Law in doing presentations. So while the internet may be more reliable where I'm at, there are still occasions where I could get disconnected. But if don't worry, if that happens, we have a protocol in place to get me back within a few minutes. And as I'm presenting in full screen, and unfortunately I don't have an external monitor, I can't see anything else other than my slides. So I will do the Alt tab occasionally so that I can see if there are any message prompts or reminders. What this means is that I will be answering questions towards the end of my presentation. But don't fret, there is a dedicated time for a Q&A. And finally, when we do get to the Q&A, I would like to limit the questions to questions purely about the science of AI. So AI is present in a lot of controversial topics, and I would much rather avoid making value judgments on the controversial topic and focus instead on the AI aspect. Okay, so with that, let's start. So today I bring to you an interesting topic: explainable AI or XAI. So, in this area of rapid technological advancements, we have tools like ChatGPT and Google Bard, who have skyrocketed in popularity and accessibility. So, they're no longer stuff of science fiction, but we can consider them as becoming the norm nowadays. So, however, with this widespread adoption comes a lot of questions and inevitably controversies. So the topic of XAI isn't just a buzzword in the tech world. It's a critical perspective which underscores the acceptance of people and the proper use of AI systems. So for this session, I will be talking about why there is a need for XAI or explainable AI, then what XAI is, how it's done, and finally, what it hopes to achieve. Okay. So let me talk about the black box problem of AI. Now, when I talk about the black box, I'm not talking about the black box found on the planes that's actually colored orange. So, the black box problem in artificial intelligence refers to the difficulty of understanding the reasoning behind an AI system's predictions or decisions. So, an AI model can actually get so complex that in how it comes up with a decision or prediction that how it does it is not even known to the researchers or engineers who set up the AI system to begin with. So this becomes a problem when an AI system makes a prediction that is contrary to what you would normally expect. So here's a case in point. We all know that when you submit a CV or resume, it is scanned by an ATS. So ATS is what's known as an application tracking system and done by HR systems. So now, if you've ensured that your CV or resume is in the correct format, and you put in all the right keywords for pickup by that AI, and you know that your experience is solid, but you still didn't get that interview. So don't you think you deserve an explanation on why your CV was glossed over by the ATS AI? So things like this are controversial, and as AI use becomes more widespread, we can expect more controversies like these to increase in number. And true enough, with the adoption of AI these past few years, there has been an uptick in AI controversies. As you can see in the graph, there is a gradual increase in the number of issues reported. In 2021, the reported issues on AI controversies are four times greater than in 2017. So, as AI use becomes more ubiquitous or widespread, this upward trend is only going to continue. So, it's 2023 now, going to 2024. So, you can only imagine that that number has probably gone up. Put it in another perspective, the rise of controversies is also proof that AI is indeed getting a lot of traction. So more use means more controversies. So those of you who are in the academe can probably attest that you now have to worry about AI generated papers or assignments. And KPMG did a study on the adoption of AI, and they found some interesting things on how people felt over its adoption. So the findings suggest that there is a gap between the acceptance and approval of AI by the public and people acknowledging the usefulness. And so people acknowledge the usefulness of AI, but they may not trust or embrace it fully. So this mistrust of AI could be due to various factors, maybe superstition, lack of awareness, lack of education, maybe a fear of lack of regulation on the deployment of AI systems. So it becomes obvious that despite the capabilities that AI systems offer, there is an apparent unwillingness to embrace this technology. And you've all heard the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. And where there's fire, you have to call in the firemen. The metaphorical firemen in this case, or the legislators or the lawmakers. So the surge in controversies coupled with the swift adoption of AI and AI-based technologies, has led to the development of corresponding legislation for regulation requiring explainability. So, foremost among these regulation or legislation is Article 22 of the GDPR. That's the for the European Union, the General Data Protection Regulation. um, it states that the automated individual decision making affects a person. When an automated decision making affects a person, then that person is entitled to the right to explanations. Explanation. Sorry. So many legal experts contend that this provision in the GDPR grants individuals um, the right to require an explanation following decisions made using AI. And it's not only the European Union that requires or mandates explainability. There are other frameworks and legislation that mandate the principles of transparency and explainability in AI systems. So Australia, for example, have the, what they call the AI ethics principles. New Zealand has an algorithm charter. Even countries such as China, Singapore, the Philippines, and also Europe again, with its upcoming AI Act, they all have regulations or frameworks that require explainability. And of course, there are the ISO standards. So, excuse me. So, ISO 24027, which is a standard for regulating bias in AI systems and aided decision making, and also ISO 24028, which is the overview of trustworthiness in artificial intelligence. So now it becomes obvious that because there are regulations and frameworks, one of the reasons for XAI is that it's mandated by law or regulation. But also there could also be contractual obligations. For example, a company commissioned you to create an AI system. They would obviously want to know how that AI system works. So they have contractual. So again, there's an obligation imposed by contract. And again, so because this is contractual and regulatory, they're not like Metro Manila traffic lights, which are suggestions. They're mandates that we must adhere to. And also, as a testing practitioner, we understand or we understand as testing practitioners, we understand the critical importance of verifying systems output. So it's not just about checking if a system is behaving correctly, it's also about ensuring the integrity of the AI work and those who rely on it. And in with the advent of hacking nowadays, in addition to verification, we also have a responsibility to assess the risk and vulnerabilities of the AI system. So this isn't optional. It's become a necessity in today's complex technological landscape. And we also strive to safeguard our AI systems against unwarranted biases. So it's not just about fairness, it's about building systems which reflect the best of our values. And finally, by providing explainability, we're not just making our system transparent, we're building confidence among the users. So really, this is the key to fostering trust and promoting widespread adoption of artificial intelligence. So in summary, XAI or explainable AI is more than just a feature of artificial intelligence. It's really a pathway to making AI more acceptable and beneficial for everyone. Now, when we talk about XAI, explainability is one of its characteristics, as we can glean from the name. But according to the ISTQB, or the International Software Testing Qualifications Board, it has two other characteristics. So, first characteristic would be transparency. So, transparency is considered to be the ease with which the algorithm and training data used to generate the model can be determined. So, for example, if I have a weather prediction system, so I get a model, train it to predict the weather, transparency would mean knowing what data, like temperature, humidity, wind speed, that was used to train the model, and the algorithm, like neural networks or maybe XGBoost or random forest, that was used to come up with the AI model. The next characteristic of XAI is interpretability. Interpretability is considered to be the understandability of the AI technology by various stakeholders, including the users. So, for example, if you have a streaming service and an AI is used to recommend movies or TV shows on that streaming service, interpretability would mean you as a user, you understand that the AI suggests those movies and shows based on previous history and your viewing history and ratings. So you would no longer wonder why you're getting all that Korean novella recommendations. And then finally, the obvious one is explainability. So explainability is considered to be the ease with which users can determine how AI-based systems came up with a particular result. So, for instance, if an AI system denied my credit card application, explainability would mean the user could find out why. So perhaps maybe due to low income or poor credit history. So next, let's take a look at the different types of XAI or XAI methods. So I'm going to present a rather simple diagram. While it's a simplified explanation, I believe it captures the essence of how an AI system processes information. So first, we begin with the input. The system begins by receiving data input, which could be anything from images to text to numerical data, and then the data is fed into a machine learning model. So this input is then processed, and the model has been trained to identify patterns based on the data and make decisions based on the input. And then obviously it would have an output. So when the algorithm or the machine learning model generates an output, it is a reflection of the insights it has gleaned from the provided information. So This output could be a prediction, a classification, a recommendation, or any other form of result which provides value based on the initial data provided. So this process exemplifies the power of AI of converting raw data into meaningful and actionable information. Now, for each of these steps, there is a corresponding type of explanation that you would want to find. For example, on the input, so you would want a specific type of explanation. For example, you would in the input, what inputs are most influential in determining an output? So, because machine learning systems are complex systems, questions of explainability would more often tend to refer to a particular area in this process rather than the whole system. So, and then, for example, if you have questions regarding of how that data was processed, you would ask the details of what algorithm was used and how does the model work. And then when you have questions about the output, your question would probably what's needed to change the output and why is the output like that? And because there are varying explanations, it means that there would be several types of explainability methods as well. So for example, for the input, the XAI method for that would be data saliency mapping, which I will go in the succeeding slides. I will go through these methods and be providing more detail on them. But real quickly, data saliency maps illustrate how strongly different input features affect the output from a system. And then if you're talking about explanation regarding the algorithm or the machine learning model, we have what you call inherently interpretable models. So these are models whose structure and function is easily understood by a human user. For example, if the output is a resembles a linear function or a quadratic function, you would just look at y equals mx plus b. So if you undergone linear mathematics, you would be able to interpret what that means. And then another would be, for example, if the model is based on an ensemble model, meaning it's several machine learning models pieced together, you would use a method called decomposable systems, which is wherein the analysis is structured in stages with the focus on those steps that are most important in decision making. So essentially, you're decomposing that ensemble model into separate components and focusing on on those areas where which contribute strongly to the decision making process. And then finally, for some black box system, which like when you go through deep learning, when it's really hard to determine how the model um, came up with that output, they have what they call proxy models. So this is where they make use of a second interpretable model, which approximates the complex black box model. And then for questions relating to output, we have what we call counterfactual or example-based explanations. So um, counterfactual examples are explanations focused on a single case that identifies the correct sorry about that explanations focused on a single case that identifies the characteristics of the input that would need to change in order to produce an output. Okay, so I know that's a mouthful, but I think if I go in to the next slides where these things are tackled in more detail, maybe it would be clearer. So the first thing we're going to take a look is a picture of a hand that looks like a face. So how would, for example, an AI system classify this one? Would this be a hand or a face? Um, so what an AI system, so how we analyze how an AI would, for example, decide on whether this is a hand or a face is through the use of saliency maps. So a saliency map is a type of heat map that highlights the important features of input data that an AI model focuses on to make its predictions. So in this example, if the AI identified the picture as a hand, the saliency map highlights the areas of the image where the hand's features are located. So so the AI decided that this is a hand. So in a saliency map in AI helps us visualize what the AI is looking at or considering when it is making decisions. Next, we'll take a look at an example of a counterfactual example. So, um, really briefly, counterfactual explanations show us what should be different in an input instance in order to obtain a predefined output. So, if you ask the question, "What if I did this?" or "What if I did that?" you're actually asking for a counterfactual example, and counterfactual examples should be straightforward. So here's a concrete example. So they would say that your housing loan was disapproved even though your income was above 75,000 because your credit rating was rated CC, which apparently is a low rating. So if your current income was this amount, your application would have been approved. So now, counterfactual examples are used to examine individual cases and are useful in addressing individual complaints or inquiries. So this type of XAI method is useful for certain industry types, particularly like loan companies or utilities, where people are asking a lot of questions. And then we have inherently interpretable models, so sometimes known as glass box models. So I think this is also inherently explainable. So, for example, an example of this would be I mentioned earlier quadratic equations. Also, certain AI algorithms which are not necessarily machine learning systems, such as expert systems, fall into this category. So, in an expert system, FYI, instead of machine learning, you actually brute force the decision making. So you have a rules engine with a lot of if else, and maybe cases to come to specify a certain decision. So yeah, inherently interpretable models are inherently understandable or should be. And then finally, when you're talking about the black box problem in AI, you would go with the post hoc explainability, meaning after the fact, after the decision has been made, because it's very hard to really determine how the AI decided that way. Um, you resort to these methods. So let's first take a look at the first one, decomposable systems. So again, the analysis is structured in stages. So this is done when, for example, if the complex model is an ensemble model, meaning it's just it's several it's a model that's made up of several models grouped together. And so in which case the different models are separated and the analysis is done based on which particular model or which stage contributes more to the decision making process. And so the other one is what's called a proxy model. So when you're doing a proxy model, an example of this would be Lime, or what is called as linearly interpretable model agnostic explanation. You create a second model which approximates or matches the black box system. Sorry about that. So explainability builds trust. For example, in the field of medicine, how would you feel if a doctor prescribed bitter tasting medicine or a difficult procedure without explaining what it does and what disease it's supposed to heal? I know it's an extreme example, but I've heard of cases where people abandoned treatments or medicines because they couldn't understand what it was doing. And similarly, I'm pretty sure all of us have gone to school. We all like the teacher that explains how grades are computed. So results are easy to accept if they're favorable to us, but in case there are negative outcomes, explainability helps maintain or build the trust. So it's especially true for AI systems. Now, um, we talked about explainability. How then would we say that explainability is good enough, or you're satisfied with that explanation? So now the US military commissioned a study on how to measure the explainability of AI systems. So this diagram, which I'll show you, is a result of one of those studies. So, for example, you have a user, and you have a system, an AI system that is that has undergone XAI methods, meaning you have a method that is capable of being explained. Okay, so whether that went through documentation or there was a proxy model that was used, it's an explainable model. So initially, a user may feel, sorry, I have to squint because even in my screen, this thing is very small. So initially, a user may feel some trust, an initial mistrust of the system. Um, okay, it's an AI system. How do I go about using it? Will it work according to what I intended to be? So what is done is that an initial explanation is, our initial instruction is provided to the user, and this results in initial mental model for the user, meaning, okay, because of that explanation, I have an understanding of how that AI system works. And finally, when an explanation is provided, the user's mental model is revised, and when that is revised, appropriate trust is created, which leads to better performance. So there are um, XAI methods, which there are some tests which determine how good those explanations are. So again, when there's when the user has the proper knowledge in interacting with the system, it leads to better performance. So the first test is what is known as the goodness criteria. Um, is the explanation good enough for me? And then the test of satisfaction. Am I satisfied with the explanation? And then finally, the test of comprehension. Do I understand the explanation? And the test of performance. So when Chat GPT first came out, there were a lot of inflated expectations, which led again to the improper usage of Chat GPT. So people gave vague prompts with the expectation that something more specific, which led to Chat GPT, because there were vague prompts to begin with. Chat GPT spewed out inaccurate or vague results. However, after some time, people discovered prompt engineering and chain of thought prompting, which were documented and released to the public. And so this led to ChatGPT giving out better results. So this is a result of having good explainability, which results in more meaningful interaction with the AI system. So again, so if you follow the blue flow, ChatGPT came out. Users had an initial um, mental model of how the system is going to operate, and then explanation was provided on what that thing is supposed to be. And then so users were able to revise their expectations and their mental model of what ChatGPT is capable of. And so because of these again prompt engineering and chain of thought um, prompts, it led to better performance. So let's take a look at how these different um, XA this I mean the how the orange tests are measured. So first would be the what we call the goodness criteria, the test of satisfaction, and test comprehension. So what counts as an explanation depends on what the user needs, what the user knows, and what the user's goals are. So in evaluating an explanation, we ask the questions: is the explanation good enough? Am I satisfied with the explanation? And do I fully understand the explanation? Unsurprisingly, such questions fall more in the realm of psychologists and psychiatrists. And so the way these are measured through psychometric measurements, we make use of surveys, debriefing sessions, and interviews for their measurements. The test of performance, on the other hand, deals with interacting with the AI system itself. So we can only evaluate the performance of an AI system if we interact with it and perform functional testing. So, and if we're dealing with APIs or services to be able to use the AI system, then we would need to do automated testing. And also, the trusting of AI systems will always be exploratory. So, for example, we need to verify that the AI we always need to verify that the assertions of the AI is true. So, this such situation lends itself to a plethora of exploratory testing scenarios, hence the need for exploratory testing. So, with that, the landscape of XAI, or explainable artificial intelligence, it's continually evolving with there are emerging AI advancements, ushering in a lot of things. So while a lot of questions remain unanswered, it's clear that AI is gaining momentum and I guess, becoming more widespread. So as AI adoption rises, so do the accompanying questions and challenges. So explainable AI makes artificial intelligence transparent and easily understandable. So with that, it paves the way for more effective and trusted applications. So in this ever-changing landscape, testing and quality engineering stands as a sort of a gatekeeper, if you will, for systems assurance and clarity. So, and now this is SoftCon. We're in the business of technology. We have a responsibility to teach people that technology is there to make their lives better. So XAI is a tool towards the endeavor. And I guess with that, that ends my presentation. And thank you very much for your time. And I'd like to open this up now for Q&A. Okay. I hope I didn't get muted. So, okay. So I don't see any questions. Can somebody set up a question? Okay. Here we have a first question. Would explainability or similar core value be an ethical consideration for external regulations on AI? For external regulations on AI. Um, if I understand your question correctly, um, s- uh, y- I guess for the first question, I guess so my understanding of your question is that uh, sorry, I'm still trying to figure it out. So you're saying that when we're regulating AI, explainability is an ethical consideration. So I guess yes, because people need to trust AI systems. I guess we owe it to the people who rely on the decision making capabilities of artificial intelligence, especially if you are on the receiving end. For example, doing loan applications, and in some advanced countries, social aid is highly aided by artificial intelligence. So it behooves the government to provide an explanation, for example, to say to someone why you're not qualified for social aid, for example. So explainability is a must, I guess, and in that sense, it's an ethical consideration. Yeah. So I guess I hope that answers the question. Is there an AI that can be considered as unexplainable? Yes. That's what is known as the black box problem of artificial intelligence, which is most especially true if researchers are are using models such as deep learning. Because it's deep, they make use of several layers of or decision nodes, for example, and because those layers are so thick, it's practically impossible to interpret them. So that's why we have to resort to what we know as proxy models to be able to answer them. Okay, I think Miss Sai is here as the moderator.
Hi,
Yeah,
hi,
Miss
Sir
Sai,
Kim. How are you?
yes.
Thank you so
Good.
much for the presentation, Sir Kim. Actually, someone really said that the presentation was very insightful. So that's Charles Rivera. So he
Yeah,
says,
thank
"Thank
you.
you
Thank you,
for the
Charles.
insightful presentation." The next question is about. It's actually from Amos, and
Mhm.
there is a known trade-off between modal accuracy and modal interpretability. With the presence of the XAI methods, would you say that this trade off is not anymore a problem?
Well, it will always be a problem. I think right now it's still a problem because if while XAI methods exist, the ones that I showed you are not entirely exhausted. Meaning there are other XAI methods as well, and each method they have their own downsides. So, for example, proxy models um, it approximates the black box model, but by using the word approximation, you're already saying I can't fully explain it. So there will always be some trade offs. So, and it's a dynamic field. Improvements are done all the time. What is clear though is that because there is a mandate, an ever increasing mandate, and my basis for saying that would be the growing number of legislation that grows daily. So right now, companies can just get away with putting an AI system that's pretty hard to explain. But when these regulations kick in, then explainability would be required. So when that happens, it may stifle innovation, but at least we're not getting the short end of the stick. For example, we're erring more on the side of caution, so to speak.
Before
Okay,
I
I hope that
proceed,
answers the question.
before I proceed to the next question, Andrew would like to say that thank you because your answer to the first question was very on point. So the next question is from JC Mackham, and he says AI is often associated with trade-offs in terms of modal performance. How can researchers and practitioners strike a balance between modal accuracy and interpretability, especially in high-stakes application like healthcare or finance?
That's a very good question. So, as with all systems, we have what we call acceptance criteria. So, the acceptance criteria is actually determined by the business. So, when you're dealing with AI predictions or AI models, you're most probably talking about um, probability distribution. So, when we're talking about that, for example, when your businesses establish a certain threshold, and then, for example, they say that prediction must be 90% accurate before we release it to the public. So, but at the same time, the government is going to say, no, this would not be enough. The threshold should be higher. So again, it's going to become a tug of war between businesses and what the regulators want. So now the answer to your question of is there going to be a balance between interpretability and model efficiency or model accuracy? That remains to be seen. So right now, from what I have observed, it's because regulations have not kicked in. It's basically the businesses erring on the side of model efficiency and I guess acceptable and model performance rather than and de-emphasizing explainability. So right now it's edging more towards that area rather than explainability. So and I for one I'm personally looking at how this will play out when the regulations start to be enforced or kick in. And apparently some of the people are not aware about their right to explanation or the requirement of explainability on AI systems. They just know that an AI system works and they can explore and play around with it. But so far there hasn't been any clamor of why certain results were that way, and the transparency that we all want. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope that answered your question, JC. All right, we have another question from Mark of Stratpoint. and he's asking how can XAI techniques be applied to improve the transparency and accountability of AI-based software testing?
It has to be, well, if you ask me as a testing practitioner, XAI should be built in already into the development process. So I don't know if that's already started, but there so I think if there's no formal practice, documentation should be clear. So and I'm not talking about I'm just not talking about simply because this is about XAI, but there's going to come a point where regulators or the public is going to ask you for an explanation for those XAI systems. So if you don't have an XAI system in place, that's going to amount to a lot of back work on your end to be able to provide, for example, a counterfactual explanation, especially if you have a complex system. But if you have an XAI system built in place into your development process, you can just refer to your documentation and say that um, um, this is the explanation. So in effect, you have a system which processes questions requiring explanation. So I'm not really sure how to close with that, but yeah. Um, there should be an system baked into the development or AI development process.
Thank you, Sir Kian. Okay, let's select another question from Lou. Aside from improving human readability and justifiability of the decision made by the AI, are there any other reasons for AI systems to offer explainability?
Well, the main reason really, I think the core reason for XAI is really explainability. Sorry, establishing trust for AI systems. So, how that trust is going to be earned would really depend um, on a lot of factors. Um, so I'm not sure I understood the question correctly, but really, I guess my answer to that is people need to trust AI systems, and XAI is a means towards establishing that trust. And while there may be other reasons, this is the core reason for why we want XAI.
Okay. Lou, I hope you got your answer there. If not, you can feel free to reach out, right? We also have a question from Jeffrey Abarot, and it says probably not closely related to XAI, but there are existing regulatory frameworks abroad that require businesses to declare to their clients that they are using AI in their internal processes and at which steps of these processes.
Yes, I believe so. So, is your question saying that there is legislation which requires explainability in certain stages? Yes, definitely there is. So there are a lot of varieties of this type of legislation, and like I said, there is a website which dedicates itself to collecting AI related legislation, and it's not just in the European Union. Countries are enacting their own AI legislation. And I believe each of these legislations should be catered towards the particular need and circumstances of those countries. So I won't be entirely surprised if that is the case for those other countries. But yes, I believe that's already mandated in some states, in some jurisdictions.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you for this question, Eliazar. Sir Kim, you discussed the security challenges and trade-off when implementing XAI in critical infrastructure protection. So, how do
Mhm.
we maintain the transparency without introducing vulnerabilities, and what do we do to mitigate potential risk?
Okay, that's a good question. So, I'm pretty sure you've heard of the story where a certain software company released a chatbot to the public with the ability for reinforced learning, meaning it learns from the interaction with the users. So, what happened was there's a term called concept drift, wherein the AI system deviates from its original directives or original guidelines based because of certain learnings that it has. So for these systems, transparency is important simply because of this concept of what we call concept drift. So it should be clear what the original guidelines and of the AI systems are, so that you have a basis for evaluating whether it has deviated from its original, I guess, directive, and has totally evolved into something else. So now, concept drift is actually, it can be statistically measured. So as part of explainability, these things should be published. Number one, the the guidelines, the algorithms, and how the AI system is learning. And then the guide, similarly, there also should be what we're in fact, I was just in a talk last week, and the buzzword for that topic on AI, artificial intelligence, was the term called guardrails. So not only are we designing AI systems to learn, we're also designing systems which guards them from, I guess, what you call unwarranted learning and drifting, and achieving what we call concept drift, where they deviate from the original guidelines. So all of these things, the guardrails, the learning method, and the original guidelines, should be well published and documented, so that people know exactly that, hey, this has deviated from its original purpose.
Thank you, Sir Kim. I hope you got your answer there. We have a question from Bien Relocano, and he's asking, when creating and training AI applications based off on interfaces like OpenAI, would that interface's explainability cover for my applications?
Um, Again, a good question. So, because training AI, for example, is very expensive. So, what happens is, people, like in the case of OpenAI, there's already a pre-trained model. So, and a lot of companies who purportedly say they do AI are actually piggybacking on that AI model. So, what happens is, you're already creating an AI model, I guess, with other processing on top of it. So again, driving by the spirit of explainability, if you say that explainability is already covered by that AI that's I'm piggybacking on, you're not revealing the additional processing that's being done on top of that AI model, which goes against the spirit of explainability. So I believe you should also provide guidelines as well on what additional information you're doing in filtering before you feed into the system. Because again, if you're doing data filtering or data processing prior to feeding into the AI system, this introduces the concept of unwarranted biases, and you may actually be feeding biased data into the AI system, and the information that would come out would, I guess, would probably mean you're getting decision based on biased data as well. So yeah, I guess it should be published, and there's documentation on that additional processing done.
There you have it, Bien. Okay, let's go to the next one. Jim Zandueta says, "Great session, Sir Kim. Very insightful." So this is his question. Where are we now at harmonizing the global standards to ensure ethical and transparent use of AI by governments and other governing bodies?
Harmonizing, that's a good question. Right now, what I can tell you is that regulations are coming out like mushrooms. So obviously, there is the international standards ISO, which already, and the IEEE, they've come out with standards regulating for artificial intelligence. But these are what you call voluntary frameworks. So, well, because they're voluntary, um, organizations or companies can obviously adapt it, but at the same time, they can also choose to ignore it. So when it comes to harmonizing, I guess that would all come down to compelling legislation, because once it's legislated, it's the law. They are compelled um, to obey, I guess, to obey and observe those standards. And because this is new legislation, meaning, and when something is new, it's entirely untested. It doesn't go to the courts. There's no judicial interpretation as of yet. So it's going to be a really wild and dynamic field in seeing how this is going to play out. So yeah, again, it's exciting and I guess scary at the same time, because what we're literally we're looking at a wide open field where that's very ripe and open to a lot of interpretations based on regulations and legislation. So, um, but again, people are smart, so certain best practices are going to come out, certain decisions are going to be made, and once and give it a few years, things are going to be pretty harmonized by then, hopefully. Yeah.
I am hoping for that as well, sir. So, how can we measure the quality and accuracy of this explanation, sir? That's from Rob.
Good question. Good question. How do we measure the accuracy of the explanation? So, in that last slide that I showed you, which was commissioned by the U.S. military, again, there are methods um, for measuring the goodness of the explanation. So, the first one was through the use of psychometric evaluation, meaning as a user, am I satisfied with the explanation? And then also as a user, I evaluate the system and and determine if based on that explanation my experience with using the system has improved, and so you can perform a before and after, and then take a statistical measure of how that happens and come up with the result and whether the explanation is good enough. Now, while I may have shown that method, that is by far not because there's no industry standard. That's just one of the things that people are still studying. So inevitably, there may be other best practices that would come out that would measure the effectiveness of explainability. So I'm looking towards certain guidelines by governments which provide hard and clear, fast rules of what constitutes, for example, sufficient explanation. So, for example, uh, the Philippine government may come out with in rules and regulations on banks, detailing explanation on why a loan application may have been disapproved if it was done by an AI system. That could be mandated by the government. So, in which case, if that regulation or legislation exists, then that would be the litmus test or the standard for sufficient explainability.
There you go. There you go, Rox. I hope you really got your answer there. It was very insightful. So we have a question from Louis. He's asking, what are the ethical and legal challenges associated with implementing XAI, and how can it be comprehensive enough to non-technical users and improve accessibility to diverse audiences?
Wow, that's a hard question. So first, for for the legal aspect of it, you just stepped on a landmine when you're asking about the legal implications of XAI, because you have to think about data privacy, and then even the intellectual property question, who owns the intelligence gained from the AI based on the data model that it was trained on, and then ethical considerations. For example, what is ethical for some people may not be ethical for another group of people. So I have no clear answers to this on what constitutes as ethical. Except for the fact that a large majority of people decide what's going on, what's ethical or not, and whether you like it or not, um, what constitutes as ethical is going to be even mathematically is going to be decided by those people. And when we're talking about ethics in what ethics in AI, we're actually talking about a statistical measure. So what this means is that an AI is going to spew out results, and then it's going to be measured by results which we think is fair. Now, the distance between the what is determined to be a fair result and the results spewed out by the AI um, that's considered to be the difference between those two results is considered to be the amount of bias that the AI system has. So it's actually a statistical measure. So the question of what is ethical, yeah, is um, while you may say it's objective, it's actually subjective and based on decisions made by a majority of a certain group of people. So my take on this is that we have to wait on what those ethical judgments are and then baseline the results the AI system spews out based on those established ethical points or ethical measures. Now, for the legal, um, well, it's just a minefield with the number of um, legal complications that it may be. So I guess I'm losing my voice now. So yeah. Yeah, so I have no clear answers on the legal side of it, other than it's a minefield and with a lot of considerations that need to be done. So no clear answer on that one.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Kim. I guess because you're losing your voice already, let's have the last question from Mar de la Torre. So, are AI systems mature enough to gatekeep or decide whether a certain action can be performed or give access to users in production environments?
Would you mind repeating the question? Sorry.
Are AI systems mature enough to gatekeep or decide whether a certain action can be performed or give access to users in production environments?
Okay, so I'm not sure I understand the question. So um, so you're saying that AI systems are mature enough so that what was the second sentence? I'm sorry.
Is
The last one.
AI system mature enough that it can gatekeep or it can decide if a certain action can be performed or give access to users in production environments?
I guess so. My understanding of this question is that AI systems can be developed to be smart enough so that when a user, when he's in a production system, it can police the actions of a user in a production environment. So, meaning, for example, I guess an example of that would be um, I'm on I'm on a payroll system, and I'm only supposed to do certain things on the payroll, but because an AI system is guarding it, it disallows me from performing certain actions based on certain rules. Well, that's certainly an interesting concept where you have an AI system as a sort of a guardrail against performing certain actions, and in a way, that system is already in place with a lot of your phones, where you say that, for example, where sometimes you're using the phone and the phone would say, "It looks like you're performing a certain action. Would you like me to do this instead?" And sometimes when you're browsing, for example, Bing, and then it says that it looks like you're searching for this particular um, term. Here are some suggested answers. So, in that way, systems such as Microsoft and Google already have AI assisted technology, which helps users um, get more from the system. So certainly, it's not a far fetched idea that at some point AI would police against users performing certain strategies or certain unwarranted actions in live systems. So yeah, but I don't think we're at that point yet. It's mainly the AI is mainly assistive in terms of AI use on certain systems. Yeah. And you can observe that, if, for example, if you use Bing, for example, as a search engine, it has a lot of suggestions. And if you're part of the Microsoft, again, not an endorsement of Microsoft, but if you use Microsoft systems, they have a lot of AI assisted technologies, which lets you maximize, I guess, your interaction with their system.
Thank you so much, Sir Kim, for answering all those questions. There are still a lot more questions, but feel free to reach out to Sir Kim if that's fine with you, Sir Kim. You can always meet him at the lounge or shoot him a message here on AirMeet if you have any further questions. So in the meantime, I'll be asking Sir Kim to stop the screen share, and if I can ask for a quick photo op. I'll be turning my
Okay.
camera and my microphone off for a couple of seconds.
Thank you,
Please.
everyone. And before we leave, if anyone's in my part of the world and would like to connect, please feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, thank you, everyone. It's been nice. Thank you.
Thank you again, Sir Kim. And of course, please feel free to reach out to Sir Kim if you have any further questions. For those we were not able to address the questions, please feel free to drop a message to Sir Kim. And please don't forget to join the speed networking at 3:45 p.m. And I'll see you in the next session. Thank you, Sir Kim.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.